Welcome back to Healing Mama Podcast. I am Val, aka Healing Mama, and I have my beautiful mama here with me today. We are following up. We are filming this the day before Mother's Day, so I am in Texas, and I wanted to do an episode with my mother since she's been talked about a lot. So you'll be able to, talk to them, talk to the viewers about our relationship, what we've gone through, where we're at now. And so I don't really have a title for this one yet, so you'll see what it is whenever I post it. So we'll start off with a quote. When we heal ourselves, we heal the next generation that follows. Pain is passed through the family line until someone is ready to feel it, heal it, and let it go. So for me, I feel like as Latinos and like grandma's, generation and then your generation, like we never really talked about mental health. We didn't talk about pains or traumas. So like hey, this happened to me and it hurt me. This is what I did to heal it, or this is how I feel now. So I feel like that's the trauma, and then it gets passed down, right? So like the abuse in a parent-child relationship, right? Like you used to get beat by your dad, and at that point in time, your dad thought that that's what you were supposed to do, right? You're supposed to
Wait, that was discipline, but it was
too far. Yeah. And so then you seeing that, so that means that he probably used to get beat, right?
Yes, he did.
So it was like passed down. So it's like our generational traumas and curses are passed down generation to generation because somebody doesn't know how to fix it. So we just do what we learned. And so at some point in time, somebody stops and they're like, hey, is this normal? Like, is this right? And so I feel like, with grandpa spanking you, with grandpa beating you at times, like not to where like you had to go to the hospital, but like taking it overly, right? Then as you had me and Josh, you were like, hey, this is what I did, right? And so then on my end, I was like, hey, like, let me try something different and just see how that works. And so like the other day I had a conversation with Eli and I told him at the end of the day, I think spanking at times is a lack of communication. Like we don't know how to talk to the kid in that situation. So it's like, I'm going to spank you to teach you that this is wrong versus sitting you down and being like, hey, why did you do this? We don't do this because, and so I gave him the example of when he was writing on the walls at St. James in the bathroom. And I told him, like, I pulled him aside. I said, I could have spanked you and been like, we don't write on the walls. That's bad. Spank, spank, spank. Well, what is he going to really learn from that, right? So I told him, what I did is I pulled him aside and I told him, hey, we don't do this because if you start on this track record, you're going to end up getting to a point to where you're so used to doing bad that that's going to become your life, right? And so that's how I feel like generational traumas are passed down. And I feel like you have to break them. Somebody at some point in time, even with me, like there's things that I've done that Jalen's like, hey, I don't ever want to be like that. And I'm like, that's good. I'm glad you could see that. But we don't realize it because it's just passed down, passed down. It's like, here's the luggage. Now it's your turn to carry it. I mean, then it's your kid's turn.
So as far as discipline, yes, he went over like my dad. I love my dad, but he did go overboard. Um, and I know I picked that up from him. And same thing happened with me. But like I do believe in discipline. I think that like nowadays kids have gotten out of hand because they don't have discipline. Not necessarily that you always have to be beating on your kid or like spanking them. But there has to be discipline. Um I wish I would have done things differently.
But you didn't know it at that point in time.
I wish I would have. And it's crazy because in listening to all your podcasts, it's like, it's embarrassing, but I'm learning from my daughter, I'm learning like from my daughter, and I wish I would have had the wisdom that you have now back then at your age. And look at how old I am now. you know, it's
learning.
Yes. And it's disappointing.
But it's not disappointing because if you think about it, you have to have grace with yourself in the extent of nobody was trying to heal before me, right? So like grandma wasn't trying to heal. We kind of went to this religious side of things, which religion for a lot of people is forgiveness. So if you feel like you're forgiven, you don't really talk about it, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm forgiven, God forgave me, like I'm gonna move on. But in healing, you talk about it, you try to change it. And so I feel like there's two differences in the sense of like with healing, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna explain it, versus like, hey, God forgive me, I'm never gonna talk about it again. You know what I mean? So there's two different things. And so I feel like with grandma, like how could you have known to work on anything if you felt like, hey, like this is everything that I went through as a kid, this is everything that I went through growing up. Like we do what we learn. And that's what I was explaining to Jalen. Like there's some things that I've done to where I feel like I've done them because this is what we did, right? It just passed down. And so then I have to like look at it and like, okay, is this necessarily the right thing? Or am I doing it because this is like what I was raised and brought up to do? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like in the Latino, I don't know how it is for other cultures because I'm Latina, but I feel like in the Latino household, like we don't talk about that. Like I'm pretty sure grandpa struggled with mental illness in some type of way, you know, like bipolar maybe, I don't know, but he had like such anger and aggression, and that could be from trauma that he had, that he held
It's from his childhood.
that he never let it go. But we don't talk about mental illness because it's like taboo. Like don't talk about that. We don't say that. And so, you know, your dad didn't talk about it. So when you were going through things, I'm pretty sure you felt like you couldn't talk about it. That you just had to hold it in. Like you have to be strong type of deal. And so that's why I'm like, okay, like I look at it as now with Eli and Jalen, and I'm like, man, I know what it feels like. I don't want them to be sad or like hold that in. Like, but I'm just learning that now, you know? Like I said on the other podcast, like I was mean, I was angry, but I couldn't see it. And so now knowing how I feel now, and I'm looking at life now with like, okay, I knew I was angry. I knew how I was feeling, but I didn't want to tell people. And that was hard. So I don't want Eli and Jalen to feel that way. So now I try to like tell them like, hey, like how Jalen said in the other podcast, I always tell her like, use your words because she shuts down. And it's easier to shut down because you know how to be vulnerable. But I really wanted to bring you on because like I said, you're like a topic of every podcast. Like, you know, you're my mom. So you raised me and you were in my life constantly. You know, it wasn't like an in and out thing with my dad. And so I always say like, I never want to like say like anything bad about you guys, but I do have to be honest and explain. So my experiences and situations are different from yours because you raised me. But at the same time, now I'm learning. Before, I'm not gonna lie, in the past I used to hold so much anger, and you and I have talked about this, like where you could feel that I was angry at you.
I knew it. I knew it.
And so I could feel that, and now I've turned a corner to where I'm like, hey, this is your first time being a mom, and I'm your first child. So it's different from Josh, who me and him are almost 8.5, 9 years apart. So you learned with me first. And so this is your first time being a mom. And even with him, you have different experiences. You're still learning. So we don't necessarily know what we're doing. We're kind of like taking a trial and error. And so now looking at it and releasing that anger, right? Releasing that hurt, whatever it is, because I'm looking at it as like, my mom didn't know what she was doing. There's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you had your mom and like, that's your example, right? But when you get into the nitty gritty of it all, this is your first time being a mom. They just handed me to you and you're like, oh shit. Like, what am I supposed to do with this hairy ball? Like, you know, it is so, I'm seeing it now like that. And there was a point in time, I feel like growing up, you were younger too. Like, you know, you were in your 20s when you were raising me. You didn't have me super young like I had Eli, but you were still young, like 23?
I was
24 years old. So still young. We don't even have our adult brains by then. So you know what I mean? Like you were still trying to raise me and figure life out, being a single mom, losing your husband from divorce, you know, infidelity issues, whatever the case is, right? Traumas, whatever you went through. So you're trying to figure out your life, but yet you have this other little life to be responsible for and figuring that out. But when you're a teenager or you're in your 20s, I don't feel like we look at it from a point of grace, right? I couldn't see past it. All I could see is myself. So I couldn't see past myself and what you were going through. I couldn't see past myself in the sense of like, I was like, no, she did this, she did this, she did this, but I didn't see all the factors that you had behind you. I didn't see the unhealing part behind you. So now coming to it from a point of grace, like, hey, like she did the best she could. At one point in time, this lady who told me, you know, let's say that this little girl, she wants $1. She's like, hey, I want $1, I want $1, I want $1. And all that mom has to give is 50 cents. And she's like, look, all I have to give you right now is 50 cents, but you can take it all. Like, you can have it all. And she's like, no, I want the dollar. We always want more and feel like we deserve more than what the other person can give us sometimes. But they're giving us their 100%. So at those times when I feel like maybe I didn't have what I needed, you were giving me your 100%, even though I couldn't see that. The same thing for your parents, you know, like when you felt like you were feeling some type of way, like you grew up in a household of 4 girls. So that's a lot different than the dynamic that I had. So when you felt maybe less than, or like they were favoring one, at some point in time, they were giving you all they had, or all 4 of you all that they had. But you don't see it like that because we can't see past ourselves. So I feel like I'm in the season of unbecoming. Like unbecoming everything that I was, unbecoming the anger, unbecoming the resentment. Like I have to unbecome that. I have to unlearn that because I had that for so long. And so I feel like our relationship as teens, or even let me backtrack. As a kid, do you feel like you really leaned on me?
Yes, I did. But I did, but it's weird because, like, ever since you were little, you've always been very mature. Like, it was like,
A mini adult.
yes, exactly. Sometimes you would tell me things. I would go to you and I shouldn't have done that. I would tell you certain things I was going through or whatever. And like I said, that's my big mistake. But the things you would tell me would blow me away. I mean, I think that was good, but I don't know. But
What do you think, like, how do you think our relationship turned to like a level of where at one point in time being little, like I was somebody that you leaned on, to teens, like we had this like animosity, this fact, like head bashing.
yes,
What do you think was like the reason for that, or like why we were the way that we were?
uh,
Yeah, no, be honest. Be honest.
teen years were bad. Like, you just wanna, as a mom, you just wanna shelter, you wanna keep so many people away.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I was telling you earlier is, like, when you would talk to certain people I didn't want you to talk to, the more I tell you don't, the more you did it. Versus, what if I would have done it the way you're doing it now, like, um, like, you say, don't go, like, the more you tell a teenager not to do it, the more they're going to do it. That never entered my mind, which is why I was on you, on you, on you, on you. And the more I did it, the more you went the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
Why we clash sometimes.
yes, a lot, a lot. Because I've always been strict,
Mm-hmm.
always been strict. Um, but it was hard. The teen years were hard.
And I didn't have my dad. So you were playing the role of like, hey, I'm the mom and the dad.
Even though Pedro was there for many years of your life growing up,
100%.
but I was still dad.
Pedro is my stepfather, or was my stepfather. One of that.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying he was there for a good many years of your life.
But he wasn't necessarily like the stepfather in the sense of like, hey, here's this boyfriend, let me sit him down and have a conversation.
That was
You
always
played that role.
That's why I always felt I've always, all my life played both.
I get that, right? Because now I have Jalen, I have Eli. Eli doesn't have a girlfriend, but he goes through his little moods and his little attitudes. Jalen has a boyfriend. She has things that like I'm learning, and I'm like, okay, like I could see this now from my mom's side. And I feel like, again, I don't know what the reasoning for it, but it's like I know you had like a lot of anger, right? But like the sense of, I think where the line got crossed was like name calling and like crossing that line of like respect for your child. And then I, in turn, disrespected you as my mother. So we, in a sense, disrespected each other. And I feel like that like inflamed it because you are working on yourself, obviously, but like you can anger pretty quickly, as could I. You know what I mean? So it was like, here's a hot head, and they're gonna go head to head and head to head and head to
I'm
head.
still a hot.
And I mean, as am I feel like I'm really like trying to work on it, and I know you're trying to work on it, and like I'll send you videos or you'll send me something. They're like, we're trying to learn, but I feel like that is something that we did for so long. Like it went from our teenagers to the 20s to like just until, I've talked about it recently in February. We had the conversation that was difficult. And I feel like I almost want to tell people like have that difficult conversation because it's going to suck and be uncomfortable of like saying like, hey mom, I felt this, I felt this, I felt this, I felt this. And then in turn you get to speak your piece as well and say like, I didn't know that you felt that, or I did know, or this is what happened, or this is, you get to like say your piece as well. So we're both getting everything off our chest. But I feel like after we had that conversation, like I felt like I got closer to you. Like I felt like, okay, like this is a fresh start. Like how did you feel after that conversation or during the conversation and then after?
Mhm.
Honestly.
Okay, so I felt like it was break.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely there was breakthrough. I didn't like having to talk about a lot of the stuff uh, that I wasn't aware of. You made me aware of, and like I said, I mean, it was
Hard.
it was
It sucked.
most yes, but I mean something good came out of it.
Yeah.
Because now we've been able to forward, and I know, you know, it just, sometimes it takes me forever to snap.
Or no, like,
But
well, you generally don't think about it, right? Because at some point in time, if you don't know you're hurting somebody, how do you know that there's something to fix? Like Jalen, like it could be something as little as this. She told me she hates when I say because I told her so or because I'm your mom. She's like, that's not a real answer. And that's true because just because I'm her
I used to
mom.
say that too.
And so that's what I'm saying. We pick things up, not realize we pick it up. It's just, this is how we were raised, this is how we were taught. So we do those things. And it's just like autopilot in our head. And so she was like, that's not a real answer. Like when you tell me to do this, like I get you're my mom, but you're not telling me the reason behind why you're asking me to do it. Like, can we try to work on that? And I was like, oh shoot, like I didn't know that was bothering you. So that's what I'm saying. Like to have a conversation, like would you tell other parents have that difficult,
I mean, if you love somebody and you want them to come out of it, but not necessarily, but if you love somebody and you see that they're struggling and you want them to come out of it and you want them to succeed, it's going to be hard, but it's best that you tell them the truth so you can help them move on.
yeah. And do you feel like in a sense it helped you move on?
No, for sure it did.
Yeah.
It for sure did.
And so that's what I'm saying. I want people to have that conversation versus like, it's easy to run away, right? It's easy to forget about your parents. It's easy to, and I feel like, okay, that conversation could have gone one of two ways. With you, it went to where we fixed her. I was like, hey mom, I'm setting this boundary. Like, can you be on the same page? And you were like, yes, I'm sorry. I respect your boundary. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know. And with my dad, it went another way, right? It went to like, F you, you're a snake, you're this, you're that. So it could go one of two ways. So I don't want people to think like, oh, if you have this conversation, it's going to go amazing. It's going to be beautiful. It could totally suck.
Depends on the person.
Yeah, it could suck. You can lose that person. But if you lose that person, that means that person wasn't meant to be in your life. Their season is over. And so that's how I'm seeing it with my dad, right? Does it suck? Do I wish I could have a relationship with him? If he was able to respect me, yes. If he's not able to respect me, I'm like, okay, God, my season of my dad being in my life is over and I'm ready to heal. So let's work on that. With you, it was like, okay, I'm sorry. I can respect that. Let's try. And I feel like since February, and think about it, it hasn't even been that long, but it feels like already in the work that we've done with each other and like being honest, because even now, like you'll be like, hey Val, like I want to tell you that. And I'm like, I don't know, we're really be having that kind of conversation. Or like you'll tell me like, hey, like let's not go there.
Yeah, I feel like there was weight lifted. you know,
Yeah.
off, that's the way I feel like, like we were there and we were stagnant. We were just there. Then we talked about it, the weight was lifted off, and we were able to move forward. But it was the conversation wasn't that, you know what I mean? It wasn't
It
anything
was, like,
that it was
fun.
yes, but it was something that I'm glad, you know,
We talked about.
yes.
But that's what I'm saying though, like, because before, I feel like when we would try to be honest with each other, like, you would get upset or I would get upset and I would, like, hang up or you would hang up, like, we just wouldn't hear each other out fully. Or we didn't know how to say, like, "Hey, I don't wanna talk about that." Or, like, "Let's not get to that point because then you're gonna get upset or I'm gonna get upset." Now we can kinda be like, "Hmm, yeah, I don't really wanna talk about that. Like, let's change the subject."
Yeah.
And we're not mad. We could just keep going, right? And I feel like that's a level of communication that we've never had before. And it's a really good level of communication because, like I said, I feel like it's easy for some kids to let go of their parents and be like, "Hey, I'm upset with you. I feel this way," and not talk about it. So I'm just going to completely distance myself. But we don't have our parents on this earth for very long, right? And so it's just like learning to communicate and be appreciative because at the end of the day, you could have left me too. You could have been like, "Hey, how many parents give their kids to their grandparents or to aunts or uncles, right?" But you still, good, bad, whatever it was, you still had me. You still pushed through and became you were a single mom for a long time because Pedro didn't come into our life until 8, 7 years old. So you were a single mom. You were doing it all. And like now I said, like looking back at it and having grace with yourself, with myself and then with you, right? Like knowing like, hey, she literally did the best that she could. Even if at that point in time it didn't feel like it. I'm doing the best I could in this experience, right? As your daughter, like I'm learning, right? Because I was disrespectful. I didn't call you the best names. We didn't. We like I said, we butted heads. And I always tell people I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like I want to give them the truth. And there was like a lot of bad times, right? And then now I'm getting older, and I'm like, hey, like I had a part in that as much as you had a part in that, and accepting that, and like I said, moving past it. But I'm grateful for the moments now because at one point in time, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, I used to ask myself, like, do I love my when I was a teenager, like, I was so angry that I couldn't see past the anger because you're just that angry, right? And then there was an instance where you got punched in the face by a man. And the moment you called me crying, my heart shattered. And I was like, I do love my mom. I love my mom because if I didn't love you, I'd be like, oh, that sucks. Like,
Mhm.
my heart shattered. I was pissed. I was enraged because somebody hurt my mom. And so now I feel like that level of love has amplified because I'm like, okay, we had that conversation. Like, man, like you do love me because you were able to have that communication with me. You were able to have that uncomfortable, crappy, sucky conversation. And you still stayed. And you didn't say, hey, I don't care how you feel, F you, whatever. You stayed and it sucked. But like I'm grateful for where we're at now. And even though I'm miles apart, I feel closer to you. That's the crazy part. Because I am in California, you are in Texas, but I do feel like when we have a conversation, it's something that it's real. You can tell me like, hey, I'm feeling this way. I could tell you, hey, I'm feeling this way. And we've never been here in my 35 years of life. I'm grateful. And I'm glad that you're even able to come on here and talk about things. I know it's like nerve-wracking, you know, you're putting yourself out there, good and bad. You're like, hey, this is what it was. But I feel like that's life. And a lot of times it's easier for us to hide, pretend like everything's good and we live in this perfect little house with this perfect white fence in front of it. But behind a lot of those white picket fences is a lot of crap going on on the inside of the house. And so being transparent so other people can look at this video and be like, hey, me and my mom are that way. Or that happened with me and my mom, and be like, hey, maybe I can't talk to my mom. Or the parent saying like, hey, maybe I can talk to my daughter or my son, whatever the case is. So do you have any words that you want to share to parents on your end or to kids?
The only thing I would say it is talk to your kids. Talk to your kids. There can be breakthrough, you know, have them open up. And like I said, just move forward. It can make a difference in your life.
Yes, ma'am. Amen. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for listening. That is the end of this episode. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for listening, streaming. We are on YouTube, Podcastle, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great weekend and have a great day. Bye.